Good evening and welcome to Into the Unknown. I'm your host Cisco Lozano and we are here live on Source Radio to talk about mysteries about the weird and the unexplained. In this space we will explore all sorts of cases, from ghosts to UFOs to cryptozoology, as well as offer an hour of entertainment for the lovers of horror and supernatural. Our goal is not to make you believe, or even to offer an explanation for some of the events that are about to be told. We just want you to listen with an open mind. In this program, we'll look into a couple of poltergeist cases in our Case of the Week feature. After that, we'll talk about the mysterious Polybius in the Urban Legend segment. And in our media recommendations, we'll talk about the classic giallo horror film Suspiria. Finally, our weekly drama showcase will feature a performance of the short story It's Your Turn. A quick reminder that the player has a chat and you can contact us through there during the course of the program. Afterwards, you can email us at intotheunknowncusr@gmail.com. That's intotheunknowncusr@gmail.com. As well as find us on Twitter at theunknown_cusr or on Facebook in the group Into the Unknown Source Radio. Let's enter into the unknown. As I said in the summary, today we're going to explore a couple of poltergeist cases. But first, a bit of background, just in case I've already lost anyone there. Poltergeist is German for noisy ghost or spirit, which is a pretty fitting name for this type of phenomenon, characterized by physical disturbances, such as objects levitating and moving on their own, or even exploding, loud noises, and in some cases physical harm to people, such as biting, hitting or pinching. Sorry about that. Poltergeists are very present too in popular culture, with very famous films and franchises such as Poltergeist, of course, Paranormal Activity, or the more recent The Conjuring 2 specifically, which explores the Enfield poltergeist case that the Warrens investigated, a case that attracted a lot of media attention in its day. But today, we're going to talk about two cases that, though to a lesser extent, are well known too, and geographically closer. The first one is the Galway Poltergeist. These events took place in County Galway, Ireland, in the late 90s. The Fahey family, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but I don't care, was a pretty normal one. Parents Jackie and Esther and children Michael and Martha had led a normal life in the family house without any incidents ever since they've lived in there. But things took a more unusual turn once Martha's baby, Sarah Louise, was born. It all started with a terrible urine smell in the house that, according to Esther, and I quote, used to come all the way right down to the stairs, even the kitchen. They tried everything to put a stop to it, the piping, the sewers, but it was still there. It was only about a month later that it suddenly disappeared. After that, one night, when they were all sleeping, a loud noise was heard in the house. Jackie quickly got up and checked the baby's room to see if she was all right. She was fast asleep, so he went downstairs and checked the front room and the kitchen. Nothing. So he went back to sleep, as any normal person would do. Another unusual happening occurred around that time too. In Michael's room, his mother found what she believed to be flakes of paint that a cheap stove had made fall down from the ceiling. But when they took a closer look, they looked in fact more like eggshells than any other thing. But then things started to get real creepy and weird when one night Michael and his girlfriend were sleeping in their bedroom when a very bright pulsating light woke them up. This is actually very interesting to me because I have a friend in whose house some strange things have happened, but there's one thing in particular. One night a couple of other friends were staying there. I wasn't until the next night, but that night nothing happened. But the night that I wasn't staying there, I'm repeating myself, they saw a light floating and coming out from a wardrobe. That's really creepy, because why would there be a light coming out of your wardrobe? And what does it mean? I don't know. He's actually seen it a couple of times more when he was alone, but he doesn't have any explanation for it. We thought it could have been a light reflecting from the street, coming from the window, but the blinds were closed, so yeah. Anyway, back to the Fahey's story. And speaking about their story, their stories about what had been happening in the house spread quickly, and one day a stranger turned up on the doorstep. He told them the story of the land where the house was located, and that he feared it was a curse on the house. Originally it had been a farmhouse with fields around it, miles of them, and he said he was fairly friendly with the people that had lived in the house before them, and that they had told him about strange noises in the house, as well as seeing strange things at night in the bedroom, the old couple's bedroom. But the family didn't pay much attention to this stranger. I mean, why would you? A stranger turns up at your doorstep telling you stories about your house. They had some experience before, but yeah, there's no really reason to believe this man. But some time later, the family left Martha, the mother of the baby, alone with the baby, Sarah Louise. In the middle of the evening, she came out of the house running and calling for help. She had gone upstairs to check the baby, and the door had suddenly shut itself closed in front of her, like alone. She had tried, but it wouldn't open. She was frightened, of course, and a neighbor that had heard her ran upstairs with her, and this time they could easily open the door, and so the baby was okay. But later that night, when Michael and his girlfriend arrived home, they found Martha in her car with the baby, and she refused to go back inside the house. She asked them, though, to go fetch some things for Sarah Louise, some clothes and baby things. They were frightened too, of course, because, yeah, but went in nonetheless. And that was when all hell broke loose. When they got in, they started hearing noises, like things dropping to the floor, the toilet flushing upstairs, things like that. And as they entered the living room, they witnessed how ornaments, framed photos and all sorts of things fell from shelves, tables, the walls and mantelpiece. and even how all these things fell to the floor, and even how a small coffee table was levitating in the middle of the room. If you get into your house and see that, I would have run outside, but they managed to get the baby's clothes, and they did indeed run out. They were utterly terrified, and they basically, all of the family left the house that night. And I can't blame them. I wouldn't say in that house either. But then the funny thing is that they remembered that they had left the dog in the back garden. So they called a friend, because they didn't care about this friend, so they sent him into the unknown plug and asked him to feed the dog. He said it was okay and that he'd do it, but little did he know what awaited him there. As he was doing it, feeding the dog, he noticed a flickering light. He thought it was the lamp and didn't think much of it, but soon he realized that it was too bright to be the lamp, and the lights that he saw were coming from the interior of the house, from the kitchen window. He was in the garden feeding the dog, and they scared him so much that he just ran away, again leaving the dog there. No one cares about the dog. Poor thing. Sorry. 2 days later, the family returned to the house, only to find it in a state of devastation. It was a mess. All the furniture was turned upside down, things all over the floor, and yeah, it was really as if a tornado had been through there. They then decided to stay next door, as anyone would do, because they were unwilling to sleep in their own house. As funny as that may sound to you. This situation, though, made them seek help, and they tried the local newspaper, but the newspaper needed some proof to publish the story, of course. So the father, Jackie, and the son, Michael, thought it would be a good idea to record these noises on tape. Again, this is not a good idea. If something like this happens to you, please don't taunt the spirits. Even if you don't believe in them, just general warning. Just in case, you know. So as they were setting up the equipment, it all started again, of course, as if whatever it was that was causing it knew they were trying to mess with it, because they always knew. They panicked and ran downstairs, but just as they were going to leave the house, they heard a baby crying. That is some creepy stuff. Michael's girlfriend, who was there with them, but she wasn't involved in the taping plan, she couldn't hear it, the baby crying, and she ventured upstairs in an attempt to be able to hear it. And as she was reaching the end of the stairs, a porcelain vase flew past her and crashed against the wall of the baby's room. Now they were desperate to get help, and they confided in the local priest, hoping that the faith in the church could put an end to all this. So the priest organized a private mass for the family in the front room of the house. Although in the middle of the ceremony, they started to hear the baby crying again, and it wasn't Sarah Lewis, because she was in there with them, with her mother. So the priest just decided to ignore the crying and pray louder and just finish the mass. With that, they thought the nightmare was over, but nothing could be further from the truth. The news had in fact reached Dublin, and a reporter was sent to spend the night in their house. She obviously thought it was fake, a stunt to get media attention. So she just went there to get some proof that it wasn't real. The parents weren't staying at the house, but they invited her to spend the night there with Michael and his girlfriend, who were indeed in the house. They were delighted that someone from outside the family was finally going to see if it was real or it was just them, like their imagination. Because entering into your living room and seeing the coffee table levitating in the middle of the room is clearly something that you can imagine. So yeah, they invited her in, and as they were chatting in the kitchen, preparing a cup of tea, she was typing in some initial report for her editor. They heard a noise from another room. The furniture was moving again, and pictures were flying off the wall. They heard a massive noise and ran towards the living room. A china figurine had smashed into smithereens, and the furniture was again all turned the wrong way round. The reporter, though, remained skeptical. I don't know how she could, but she did. But she couldn't find any sort of explanation. After the article was published, an investigative journalist came with the psychic Sandra Ramdani, who is a very prominent figure in the psychic world, in Ireland at least. She has stated that when she came into the house, she was immediately aware that there was a spirit presence, one that hadn't moved on properly, and that it and the house, the spirit of the house, needed healing. The family agreed to join her in a seance. During the seance, they found out that in the old farmlands, a young woman, a nun, gave birth to a baby in the early 1900s who had been fathered by a bishop. The baby was smothered by him, ostensibly where the family's house was now located. Ramdani felt that it was the baby's spirit that needed healing, and with the help of the family, they managed to release it. Allegedly, they all saw, including this investigative journalist who later on wrote a book about the incident, they all saw a baby rising towards the sky, surrounded by light and with a smile on its face. And since this exorcism, the house has reportedly been warm again, and the family has returned to their usual routine and live happier. I will now play you an extract from an interview that the Irish radio performed on Michael, the son.
And as you said at the outset, it was a peaceful night. Are you happy now that there will be no more unpleasant incidences in the house?
There will be no more, because, I wouldn't say it otherwise. I saw it with my own eyes. And our family, our house is much happier now. It's warmer, there's much more happier feeling in it. If it was still here, it would have acted up. And we know for a fact that it is gone. And she guaranteed us that it is gone and it'll never come back again.
Okay, Michael, we wish you well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed for taking a call. That's
Thank you.
Michael Fahy on the line there from
Okay. Shall we move on? The second case is the Thornton Heath Poltergeist. Thornton Heath is located in Croydon, South London, which is an area that has admittedly a pretty long and macabre history. There even is a book all about the haunted side of Croydon by Francis Stewart, if you want to read it and you are interested in that. But this case starts during a hot summer night in 1972, when the family were woken up by a bedside radio blasting out a strange station in a foreign language. They had no idea how that happened or where it was transmitted from, and they had never tuned into it before. But this was only the start of the 4-year nightmare. The following nights, they experienced similar happenings, with bedside lamps and ornaments being tampered with and thrown to the floor repeatedly, and that sort of stuff. But it was on Christmas night that year that one particular incident happened. A figurine flew across the living room and hit the husband in the head. The hit was so hard that he collapsed into a nearby chair. As his family was helping him back on his feet, the Christmas tree began to rise and shake violently. I imagine, I picture these as the Christmas tree in the Doctor Who Christmas specials, when they start flying around and killing people and destroying things. This must have been really scary for this family, and yeah, I can't imagine how they must have felt. The new year brought with it an increase in the paranormal activity experienced by this family, as they would hear footsteps of unseen visitors in the bedrooms upstairs. And yeah, I've always thought that if that happened to me, like hearing footsteps or voices from another part of my house where I know there's no one there, that would really scare the crap out of me. That's something that I've always imagined how it must feel, and I seriously hope I never experience that. So days after that, the young son was woken up in the middle of the night by what he described as a tall man with an angry-looking face, hovering over him as he laid on his bed. This is some seriously creepy shenanigans. Oh my god, poor kid. He later claimed that he was dressed in old-fashioned clothes. I mean, seriously, waking up in the middle of the night and having a tall man, a figure in the dark, hovering above your face, that's like next level creepiness. But anyways, before long, also visitors to the family's home, this time normal visitors like people, friends, they started experiencing this stuff too. One evening, during the dinner party they were holding with some close friends, the front door began to shake and they could hear violent knocks on it. Then it was the living room door. As the guests cautiously stood up, not knowing what was happening, of course, the door flung open and every light in the house started switching on and off. So I guess it wasn't a dinner party, it was a dinner rave. Sorry, excuse the pun. After all these, the family managed to get the local church to send someone their way to help. Unfortunately, the blessings and rituals the priest performed in their house only seemed to make matters worse, as in the previous story. People don't do this, don't call like normal priests. If you're going to call someone from the church or someone from your own personal religion or belief, please call someone that's an expert in these kinds of stuff, like exorcisms and purifying, healing, sage, whatever. Don't call people who don't know what they're doing. That's just, again, a general warning. Yes. They were put in contact after this with a medium who visited their house as Rand Mani visited the Far East. to find out the source of the problem. See, mediums and psychics are great. I mean, not all of them are the real deal, but some of them are... You can trust them, and they really experience these sort of stuff, and they can really help you, not these priests who have no idea what they're doing. They only make matters worse. Anyway, back to the story. Yeah. It turned out that the entity was actually a dead farmer called Chatterton. Not Chesterton, not Chesterfield, Chatterton. This spirit was angry at them. If anyone got that Doctor Who reference, please email to the program. I will send you something in return. The spirit was angry at them because he considered them to be trespassers in his home. After some digging, they found out that the farmer by that name had indeed owned the house during the mid-19th century. After the psychic's visit, the wife of this farmer joined him in the mayhem and would often follow the tenant's wife up the stairs at night. Again, that's some seriously creepy stuff. She would manifest as a grey-haired woman wearing a pinafore with her hair tied back in a bun. As soon as the old lady's spectre noticed she'd been spotted, she'd disappear into the nearby shadows. The family even reported seeing the farmer's image appear on the television screen, wearing a black jacket, a high-necked shirt, and a black cravat. This case is one of the poltergeist cases that scare me the most, because all these things are... It's not like in the previous one where they were just there in the house sometimes and they experienced things moving. In this one, they actually saw these figures. They heard the footsteps. They could easily feel the presence. And then this thing on the TV, that's one of the things that scares me the most. Like when spirits tamper with electrical stuff, because that's supposed to be, I don't know, sort of science and outside of the control, but they seem to easily control it, so no one's safe. Eventually, after nearly 4 years of enduring the paranormal activity, the family decided to give up and buy a new home at last. And once they left the house, this happening ceased immediately. But there hasn't been further reports of activity in the house, so make of that what you will. This case, if you have noticed, is more poorly documented, perhaps because the family preferred to protect their privacy. But we don't even know if this house is still standing. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed these two cases, whatever you choose to believe, and feel free to comment on them or anything else in the program in the chat. Now we venture into the land of urban legends, which aren't necessarily meant to be reports of true events. They are more like gossip, if you will. They can hold some truth to them, but it's been so distorted and transformed to the point it's almost unrecognizable. But they sure can deliver a spook or two. Today we've got the legend of the arcade video game Polybius. Legend has it that a mysterious arcade cabinet started appearing in the corners of several local arcades in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon in 1981. The game Polybius became popular to the point of addiction, and with long lines of kids who even fight over who will play next. It is said that mysterious men in black visited the machines every day, always in pairs, to collect data from it, allegedly testing the response to the game's psychoactive effects. The players started displaying some adverse effects, such as amnesia, insomnia, nightmares and hallucinations. Some of them even take their own lives. A month later, the game simply vanished overnight, never to be seen again. Little is known about the game, and there is only one piece of evidence linked to it: the Warts 1981 Sinoloction. This is supposedly the copyright of the game, even though no such thing has ever been registered. Sinoloction seems to be the company behind the game, a word created from German ones Sinne or senses and Loction to delete. Basically, it is supposed to mean something like to erase the senses or a brainwash. This has led, in fact, some to believe that the game was an experiment to influence and tinker with the minds of the kids playing the game, which supposedly used its graphics, like quick changes in color lights, equally fast changing sounds and subliminal messages, all of which became more and more intense as the game progressed to brainwash the players. These, along with the men in black present in the arcades at closing time to collect data, make some believe that it was in fact a failed experiment carried out by the CIA and the US government, not unlike Project MK Ultra or numerous other massive tests they did carry out on unknowing civilians and people with mental illnesses to develop the ultimate truth serum formula and influence the brains of their enemies. We have to remember this was during the Cold War. In fact, as recently as 2009, it was found out that an episode of massive hysteria, which had been put down to fungus in the bread, was in fact the result of a massive experiment carried out by the US government with some test drugs on this town. Many of these experiments did use LSD as the main component of the process, and many of the Polybius symptoms match those of the PTSD some of these test subjects got from bad LSD trips, which has led some people to believe the cabinet could in fact supply a dose of LSD in aerosol form to aid the visual and oral stimuli. These projects did indeed exist, but the truth behind Polybius could lie behind stories grown out of proportion of early versions of Atari's Tempest, that did cause some trouble with photosensitive epilepsy and vertigo. Also Atari's own links to the US military, developing battle simulations, and of course the general paranoia of the Cold War, as well as these brainwashing projects eventually coming to light. And of course, the internet. We all know how the internet blows things out of proportion. Take Slenderman, for example, with kids even killing each other because of these urban legend, I guess. But yeah, this couldn't possibly be real, because we all know governments would never try to control us through entertainment and media, right? Okay, as I said, please tell us what you think of all these stories, if you will. To be honest, for me, Polybius, since I discovered these legends when I was like 15, maybe even less, and highly influenceable. Is that a word? I don't know. Yeah, it's creeps me out massively because I don't know. It's like a very creepy thing, like people being able to brainwash you for just playing a video game. I don't know, and the involvement of the Men in Black, it's always been a favorite of mine. That's why I decided to include it in this first program. So yes, tell us what you think, including about these urban legends, and tell us in the chat if you've ever experienced any of these kind of stuff, poltergeists, ghostly lights. Tell us if you've ever seen a Polybius cabinet, perhaps, or if you were one of these MK Ultra test subjects. We wanna know. Okay, it's 9:38, and we are now past the midway point of the program. In this segment, we will be recommending either films, TV series, books, comic books, whatever really, that I think is worth watching, that has a supernatural or horror aspect to it. Today, for example, I will be recommending you Suspiria, the 1977 Italian giallo film directed by Dario Argento. Now, giallo is a very interesting Italian horror genre. Giallo contains elements of slasher, as well as crime thriller fiction, that sort of thing, and psychological and supernatural horror. It is a very particular Italian murder mystery that blends the atmosphere and suspense of thriller fiction with elements of horror and eroticism, usually with a mysterious killer who isn't revealed until the last act of the film. And we're done with this film lesson. I don't want to bore you in this first program. Phew. Yeah, Suspiria is the first of Argento's trilogy of the Three Mothers, three ancient and all-powerful witches, the last of which came out 10 years ago in 2007. The film is based on Thomas de Quincey's Suspiria de Profundis, Sighs of the Depths in Latin, which itself was a sequel to his previous essay, Confessions of an English Opium Eater, both very rooted in the visionary experiences of this man's opium addiction. So we go from LSD to opium. At least it's more natural, I guess. This film follows Susie, Jessica Harper, an American student, as she travels to Germany to attend ballet school. When she arrives, late on a stormy night, no one lets her in, and she sees Pat, another student, portrayed by Eva Axen, fleeing from the school. When Pat reaches her apartment, she is horribly murdered, and I can say that scene is beautiful. You definitely need to watch this movie just for that scene. The next day, Susie is admitted to her new school, but has a difficult time settling in. She hears noises and often feels ill. As more people die, Susie uncovers the terrifying secret history of the place. So yeah, it's basically a teenage drama in a ballet school, but with very strange and gruesome happenings, like fly larvae falling down from the ceiling, and I think I remember something about a dog and something happening to it. Yeah, but it's a very wholesome experience, this film. You've got these gruesome visuals which are helped by Argento's theatrical aesthetics, especially the blood, which is like red paint, and you can clearly see that it's red paint, but it's beautifully used as blood. Yeah, this is helped by Argento's theatrical aesthetics and a fantastic, brilliant, pun absolutely intended job with the lighting of the set. And also the music, composed by the Italian progressive rock band Goblin. And it's overall a great piece of cinema. It doesn't really do anything new narratively, I think, but the way in which the elements are put together, and the fact that it's not a genre and a way of making films that we are necessarily used to, especially nowadays, particularly in horror, where everything looks like a dollhouse, a theatre set. It makes it even more sinister, I think. At least that is how I remember it. And the final act, it has a very classic sci-fi feeling, you know, like Star Wars-y, Doctor Who-esque, in terms of it being chases through corridors, but it's set in a horror sort of stage, which is nice. I don't know, it's a very, very well put film. And actually, there is a new remake, new version of it being made, and it's being released next year, and it stars Tilda Swinton. So you can wait for that if you want, but the director has said that it's not going to be the same film, it's going to be a version. So yeah, I encourage you to go see this movie as soon as possible, because you're not gonna regret it. And yeah, now I'll leave you to the opening piece of this movie's soundtrack, as I said, composed by Goblin. And make sure you stick around for our fiction showcase, the horror short story It's Your Turn. Okay, guys. This is the end of the show. Thank you for listening. It's been a pleasure to host, and I hope it's been the same for you at home. As I said before, if you have any story you want to share, or a question, or a suggestion to make, please do email us at intotheunknown@gmail.com. That's intotheunknown, that stands for Coventry University Source Radio, in case you didn't get it, at gmail.com. Send us a tweet at _CUSR, or on Facebook in the group Into the Unknown Source Radio. And now I will leave you with our fiction showcase. It's your turn. Goodbye, and until next week.
It's Your Turn by Stephen D. Jackson. Read by Benjamin Durrant. I am writing this because I have no choice. I'd like to say it is a warning to others, but I have far more selfish reasons. Even if I did warn you, I doubt you would heed it, as I did not heed the warning left for me. I must not waste time, as time is wasting me in a way that defies the medical science I once believed I knew. My joints ache as I write, and I soon know I will be unable to continue. Yet this must be told, and so I write on. I am a doctor here at Rosewood Lodge. I am 27 years old, though I look older, and by the time you read this, it will be scarcely possible for you to imagine me as I was yesterday. Before me, Rosewood had no resident doctor. This was my first big break away from the hospital where I trained and qualified. At the interview, I pretty much said I'd work for anything, so they snapped me up. Rosewood is a residential care home for elderly patients. The care needs of some had started to become more advanced than those which a nursing home can ordinarily provide. The board had decided, rather than paying out for consultants and continually dealing with emergencies, it made better economic sense to have someone like me on the payroll. It was, in short, an excellent job. Relaxed but responsible, challenging but manageable, and the money was good enough for me to buy my own flat, finally. The home is essentially 3 stories of self-contained flats, divided into 3 wings, A, B, and C on each floor. Some residencies are less flats and more rooms, without locks and without any real facilities of their own. The nurses and social workers tend to stay away from me, as I was still an outsider to them, and they had the run of the place, working with the residents each day, whereas I would only see them if they were ill. One thing which I did pick up from my colleagues, however, was a strange warning about the man in room 17 on the end of wing B on the 2nd floor. The ridiculous thing about that particular warning was that the numbers on each wing only go up to 16. The nurses tended to act strangely about it, saying that if ever there was a room 17, I'd be better off not going in. I saw no harm in laughing along with it at the time, and quickly forgot all about it. Until the day I happened to be in B wing on the 2nd floor, and noticed a room I hadn't seen before. I had been at Rosewood for 3 days, and it was late. I'd been tending to a particularly unwell man in a room along the corridor who'd needed a lot of attention. I was considering referring him to a hospice in the morning after I'd studied his charts and decided they would be better placed to take care of him. So I wasn't really in a good frame of mind as I left his room and turned to make my way to the stairs. I don't know if it was my mood or the lateness of the hour, but something made me stop. I felt a tingle in the back of my neck, a creeping sense of something not right. I turned. How I wish I had not. I wish I had kept on along the brightly lit corridor, down the stairs and back to my office. Instead, I looked back along the hall to where a flickering overhead light cast dark shadows over the far wall, highlighting the steel edge of the window looking out into the blackness beyond. Glimpsed for moments at a time in that uncertain light was a door that should not have been there. I knew it should not have been there, and I did recall the warning, but truthfully, I was too intrigued and too steadfast in my belief in science and rationality to ignore it. I approached it, curiosity overcoming my incredulity. I did not feel even the faintest stirrings of fear until my fingers touched the handle beneath the elegantly carved number 17. It was deathly cold, and I pulled back my hand with trepidation. Cursing myself for a foolish child, and beginning to believe it was all some kind of prank by the nursing staff, I glanced up at the ceiling, half expecting to see a camera propped up somewhere. The thought that perhaps I was being made a fool of steeled my resolve, and wrapping my hand in my sleeve, I opened the door. For a moment I was stunned. It was one thing to make a prank door, quite another to make it open, and beyond lay a room that I knew had not existed an hour before. Inside was a residential room like any other, a small kitchenette alongside one wall to the right, next to a door to a small bathroom, a coffee table and a TV along the left, a bed stretched along the far wall beneath large windows, and the sofa sat facing the TV. Poking out above the sofa, I could just about see the top of an old man's head, wisps of grey hair draped across the leather. I should have run. I should have quit. I should have obeyed all those instincts which keep us all sane and alive, but I'd made a lifetime out of understanding and reason, and I was determined to find out what was happening. I approached the old man, the scent of old medicine and unwashed bodies thick in the air. I had the impression that he had not been disturbed for a very long time. Only a faint wheezing rasp indicated that he was breathing. Milky blue eyes widened in a withered and lined face as I came into view, and the old man's fingers resting against the leather chair's arm twitched slightly. His mouth moved a little, and his breathing became a rattle, as though he was trying to speak. I had the impression he was agitated, by my presence or something else I could not tell, but that he was also powerless to move. I sat down on a footstool by his chair, running through diagnoses in my head as I took in the pallor of his skin, the thin, cracked lips, the struggling fingers. He seemed to be dehydrated, weak, and wasted through muscle atrophy, and yet he was clothed and appeared not to have soiled himself. Someone must have been looking after him then, perhaps one of the nurses. Had they been keeping him here? A secret only revealed by some accident? The man's eyes drifted to a book lying on the coffee table and seized upon it, glancing back to me only in short, furtive motions. Intuiting that he wanted it, I picked it up, a thin, leathery tome with the date 1916 written upon it in spidery letters, and placed it on his knees. He stared at me, back to the book, then at me. So I picked it up again, and turned to the last entry of what was clearly a diary. October 24th, 1917, I read aloud, somewhat astonished that it was the same date as today, only 100 years before. The old man stared at me through wide eyes. I continued to read. My joints seize with pain. There is no hope for me. The doors of this infernal building were locked fast against me when I tried to flee. The corridors guarded by spectres I dare not name. My only retreat is here, this impossible room that should not be. With every step, I felt my body cripple further, and I had no choice but to sit. Yet now I cannot rise from my chair. My fingers can barely hold this pen. I feel age embracing me like an unwanted lover, taking years from me with each passing second. The words on the page became illegible, the scratching of the pen a testament to the writer's pain. Further down the page they rallied, large in capital letters marching across the page as though in defiance of his pending immobility. The silent man is gone. I am his replacement. Time is short. God, forgive me. I rose from the stool, my heart thumping wildly within my chest. I stumbled and almost fell over the stool as I moved away from the silent man. My thoughts a jumble, half-finished fear, the wide eyes watching me still, but now I saw something else within them, some kind of grim hope and expectation, and I fear I knew of what. All my belief in science and medicine, rationality and reason flew from me and carried away on wings of pure terror. Without another thought, I fled the room, glad beyond words when the door yielded, leading me back into the corridor beneath the flickering light. I ran for the stairs, frantically making for the comforts of my office, my computer, my life beyond this impossibility. I stopped short as I rounded the corner. Before me, at the end of the corridor, stood an old woman. She was in a dirty white hospital robe and hunched over to such a degree that her head was hidden beneath a long mop of lank grey hair, reaching almost to the ground. In one wrinkled hand she clutched the metal pole of her ivy stand like a banner bearer on some ancient battlefield. As I saw her, I knew we had no such patient here at Rosewood. Behind her, the remainder of the corridor was plunged into darkness as the overhead lights went out. The light above the woman flickered on and off, and she shuffled a little with an awkward motion as though agitated or freed by the shadows playing over her. The light went out. Instantly she was in front of me at the edge of the illumination cast by the light above my head, as though existing only in the dark places beyond. A fetid stench of wet clothes and mouldy cheese radiated from the woman, and I recoiled violently, as much from the smell as her sudden, impossible appearance. The light above me flickered. I turned and ran, mortal peril lending me speed. I tried the door to the left, but it was locked. I tried right, locked. The woman behind me uttered a hideous gurgling sound as the light above her died, instantly bringing her a few meters towards me. I kept running, and was suddenly aware of the ache in my limbs. It was harder to breathe than it should have been, and I stumbled as I ran. Before long, I was driven back into this impossible room, where I discovered that, as I feared, the old man had vanished. I shouted, I screamed, I rallied against it, but slowly the atrophy stole over me as I knew it would. The pain of arthritis grew like fire in my bones, the agony of movement as tiring as the movement itself. I couldn't resist. I lowered my exhausted body into this chair where now I sit. I have typed these words with the last of the strength I have. I soon must succumb, but I must do something before I fall into this stupor that awaits me, as did my predecessor. To speed my release, I must upload my story to anywhere a reader may find it across the internet. My fingers burn with unnatural pain as I work my phone, but desperation gives me the strength to ignore it, along with any guilt I might feel at passing on this curse. And so, to you who read this, I thank you. The next ache you feel will be the start of your sentence, and the end of mine. It's Your Turn was written by Stephen D. Jackson and read by Benjamin Durrant.